Okay, we're on to our next section of Harry Potter. I can't wait to read it. Remember, they just started eating the treats on the train. Help yourself, said Harry. But in the Muggle world, people just stay put in photos. Do they? What? They don't move at all? Ron sounded amazed. Weird. Harry stared as Dumbledore sidled back into the picture on his card and gave him a small smile. Ron was more interested in eating the frogs than looking at the famous witches and wizards cards. But Harry couldn't keep his eyes off of them. Soon he had not only Dumbledore and Morgana, but Hengist and Woodcroft, Albert, Grunin, Circe, Paracelsus, and Merlin. He finally tore his eyes away from the Dewdress Silonia, who was scratching her nose, to open a big bag of Bertie Bott's every flavored beans. You want to be careful with those, Ron said. When they say every flavor, they mean every flavor. You get the ordinary ones like chocolate and peppermint and marmalade, but then you can get spinach and liver and tripe. George reckons he had a boogie flavored one once. Ron picked up a green bean, looked at it carefully, and bit into a corner. Ugh, see, sprouts. They had a good time eating the every flavored beans. Harry got toast, coconut, baked beans, strawberry, curry, grass, coffee, sardine, and was even enough to nibble on the end of a funny gray one Ron wouldn't touch, which turned out to be pepper. The countryside, now flying past the window, was becoming wilder. The neat fields had gone. Now there were woods, twisting rivers, and dark green hills. There was a knock on the door of their compartment, and the round-faced boy Harry had passed on platform 9 3/4 came in. He looked tearful. Sorry, he said, but have you seen a toad at all? When they shook their heads, he wailed, I've lost him. He keeps getting away from me. He'll turn up, said Harry. Yes, said the boy miserably. Well, if you see him. He left. Don't know why he's so bothered, said Ron. If I'd brought a toad, I'd lose it as quick as I could. Mind you, I brought Scabbers, so I can't really talk. The rat was still snoozing on Ron's lap. He might have died and you wouldn't know the difference, said Ron in disgust. I tried to turn him yellow yesterday to make him more interesting, but the spell didn't work. I'll show you, look. He rummaged around in his trunk and pulled out a very battered-looking wand. It was chipped in places, and something white was glinting at the end. Unicorn hairs nearly poking out. Anyway, he had just raised his wand when the compartment door slid open. The toadless boy was back, but this time he had a girl with him. She was already wearing her new Hogwarts robes. Has anyone seen a toad? Neville lost his, she said. She had a bossy sort of voice, lots of bushy brown hair, and rather large front teeth. We've already told him we haven't seen it, said Ron. But the girl wasn't listening. She was looking at the wand in his hand. Oh, are you doing magic? Let's see it then. She sat down. Ron looked taken aback. All right. He cleared his throat. Sunshine daisies, butter mellow. Turn this stupid fat rat yellow. He waved his wand, but nothing happened. Scabbers stayed gray and fast asleep. Are you sure that's a real spell? Said the girl. Well, it's not very good, is it? I've tried a few simple spells just for practice, and it's all worked for me. Nobody in my family's magic at all. It was ever such a surprise when I got my letter. But of course, ever so pleased, of course. I mean, it's the very best school of witchcraft there is. I've learned all of our set books off by heart. Of course, I just hope it will be enough. I'm Hermione Granger, by the way. Who are you? She said all this very fast. Harry looked at Ron and was relieved to see by his stunned face that he hadn't learned any of the set school books either. I'm Ron Weasley, Ron muttered. Harry Potter, said Harry. Are you really? Said Hermione. I know all about you, of course. I got a few extra books for background reading, and you're in modern magical history, and the rise and fall of the dark arts, and great wizarding events of the 20th century. Am I? Said Harry, feeling dazed. Goodness, didn't you know? I'd have found out everything I could if it was me, said Hermione. Do either of you know what house you'll be in? I've been asking around, and I hope I'm in Gryffindor. It sounds by far the best. I hear Dumbledore himself was one, but I suppose Ravenclaw wouldn't be too bad. Anyway, we'd better go look for Neville's toad. You two had better change soon, you know. I expect we'll be there." And she left, taking the toadless boy with her. "Whatever house I'm in, I hope she's not in it," said Ron. He threw his wand back in his trunk. "Stupid spell. George gave it to me. Bet he knew it was a dud." "What house are your brothers in?" asked Harry. "Gryffindor," said Ron. Gloom seemed to be settling on him again. "Mom and Dad were in it too. I don't know what they'll say if I'm not. I don't suppose Ravenclaw would be too bad, but imagine if they put me in Slytherin." "That's the house you know who is in." "Yeah," said Ron. He flopped back into his seat looking depressed. "You know, I think the end of Scabbers' whiskers are a bit lighter," said Harry, trying to take Ron's mind off the houses. "So what do your oldest brothers do now that they've left anyway?" Harry was wondering what a wizard did once he finished school. "Charlie's in Romania studying dragons, and Bill's in Africa doing something for Gringotts," said Ron. Remember, that was the bank. "Did you hear about Gringotts? It's been all over the Daily Prophet, but I don't suppose you get that with the Muggles. Someone tried to rob a high-security vault." Harry stared. "Really? Well, what happened to them?" "Nothing. That's why it's such big news. They haven't been caught. My dad said it must have been a powerful dark wizard to get around Gringotts, but they don't think they took anything. That's what's so odd. Of course, everyone gets scared when something like this happens, in case you know who is behind it." Harry turned this news over in his mind. He was starting to get a prickle of fear every time "you know who" was mentioned. He supposed this was all part of the entering the magical world, but it had been a lot more comfortable saying Voldemort without worrying. "What's your Quidditch team?" Ron asked. I don't know any," Harry confessed. "What?" Ron looked dumbfounded. "Oh, you wait. It's the best game in the world." And he was off, explaining all about the 4 balls and the positions of the 7 players, describing famous games he'd been to with his brothers, and the broomstick he'd like to get if he had the money. He was just taking Harry through the finer points of the game when the compartment door slid open yet again, but it wasn't Neville, the toadless boy, or Hermione Granger this time. 3 boys entered, and Harry recognized the middle one at once. It was the pale boy from Madame Malkin's robe shop. He was looking at Harry with a lot more interest than he'd shown back in Diagon Alley. "Is it true?" he said. "They're saying all down the train that Harry Potter is in this compartment. So it's you?" "Yeah," said Harry. He was looking at the other boys. Both of them were the thickest and looked extremely mean. Standing either side of the pale boy, they looked like bodyguards. "Oh, this is Crabbe and this is Goyle," said the pale boy carelessly, noticing where Harry was looking. "And my name's Malfoy, Draco Malfoy." Ron gave a slight cough, which might have been hiding a laugh. Draco Malfoy looked at him. "Think my name's funny, do you?" "No need to ask who you are. My father told me all the Weasleys have red hair, freckles, and more children than they can afford." He turned back to Harry. "You'll soon find out some wizarding families are much better than others, Potter. You don't want to go making friends with the wrong sort. I can help you there." He held out his hand to shake Harry's, but Harry didn't take it. "I think I can tell who the wrong sort are for myself, thanks," he said coolly. Draco Malfoy didn't go red, but a pink tinge appeared in his pale cheeks. "I'd be careful if I were you, Potter," he said slowly. "Unless you're a bit politer, you'll go the same way as your parents. They didn't know what was good for them either. You hang around with riffraff like the Weasleys, and that Hagrid, and it'll rub off on you." Both Harry and Ron stood up. Ron's face was as red as his hair. "Say that again," he said. "Oh, you're gonna fight us, are you?" Malfoy sneered. "Unless you get out now," said Harry, more bravely than he felt, because Crabbe and Goyle were a lot bigger than him or Ron. "But we don't feel like leaving, do we, boys? We've eaten all our food, and you still have some." Goyle reached toward the chocolate frogs next to Ron. Ron leapt forward before he so much touched Goyle. Goyle let out a horrible yell. Scabbers the rat was hanging off of his finger. Sharp little teeth sunk deep into Goyle's knuckle. Crabbe and Malfoy backed away as Goyle swung Scabbers round and round, howling. And when Scabbers finally flew off and hit the window, all 3 of them disappeared at once. Perhaps they thought there were more rats lurking among the sweets, or perhaps they'd heard footsteps. because a second later Hermione Granger had come in. "What has been going on?" she said, looking at all the sweets all over the floor, and Ron picking up Scabbers by his tail. "I think he's been knocked out," Ron said to Harry. He looked closer at Scabbers. "No, I don't believe it. He's gone back to sleep." And so he had. "You've met Malfoy before?" Harry explained about their meeting in Diagon Alley. "I've heard of his family," said Ron darkly. "They were some sort of first to come back to our side after you-know-who disappeared. They said they'd been bewitched. My dad doesn't believe it. He says Malfoy's father didn't need an excuse to go over to the dark side." He turned to Hermione. "Can we help you with something?" "You'd better hurry up and put your robes on. I've just been up to the front and asked the driver, and he said we're nearly there." "You haven't been fighting, have you? You'll be in trouble before we even get there." "Scabbers has been fighting, not us," said Ron, scowling at her. "Would you mind leaving while we change?" "All right, I only came here because people outside are behaving very childishly, racing up and down the corridors," said Hermione in a sniffy voice. "And you've got dirt on your nose, by the way, did you know?" Ron glared at her as she left. Harry peered out of the window. It was getting dark. He could see mountains and forests under a deep purple sky. The train did seem to be slowing down. He and Ron took off their jackets and pulled on their long black robes. Ron's were a bit short for him. You could see his trainers underneath them. That means sneakers. A voice echoed through the train. "We will be reaching Hogwarts in 5 minutes. Please leave your luggage on the train. It will be taken to the school separately." Harry's stomach lurched with nerves, and Ron, he saw, looked pale under his freckles. They crammed their pockets with the last of the sweets and joined the crowd thronging the corridor. The train slowed right down and finally stopped. People pushed their way towards the door and out to a tiny dark platform. Harry shivered in the cold night. Then a lamp came bobbing over the heads of the students, and Harry heard a familiar voice. First years over here. All right there, Harry." "Ooh, it's getting so good."